right, I will go ahead and just kind of get started right quick. Thank you all for being here today. You should have received an email this morning letting you know that our scheduled presenter is out sick today, so we did have to change the topic. Hopefully you got that email, so you were expecting that. So today we're going to be actually presenting on positive parenting. So thank you all for still being here despite the change. I appreciate you. Just to kick it off, I am presenting today as well. My name is Brandy Salvatore. I am the case manager and a licensed clinical social worker here at the Cohen Clinic in Alaska. If you aren't familiar with who we are or what we do, we are outpatient mental health services. We serve active duty, we serve veterans, and we serve all of their family members. Basically, anyone that has been impacted by the duty of a service member can receive services here at our Cohen Clinic. We do have clinics across the country and soon to be across the world as we continue to expand. So if you are not here locally in Alaska, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to get you connected up with some of our clinics across the other states. If you are also here in Alaska, but not military affiliated, that's okay too. We also work with our partner agency, Alaska Behavioral Health, which encompasses a ton of really amazing programs from outpatient, adult services, child services, family services, couples. They also have PHP, IOP, all these different amazing services. So again, if you need help with that, you all will have my email so you can reach out, and I'm more than happy to facilitate that connection for you. Also, because it is me and I am presenting today, it might get a little difficult for me to be able to see the chat. Should you have a question, I will do my best to follow the chat, but also if the event that you have something to say or want a question, please know that I will circle back around. We will have time at the end to make sure that we are able to answer all of those questions. All right, so I will just go ahead and get started for the sake of time. Maybe. All the fun technology pieces of things. All right. My apologies for taking a minute. You should be able to see my screen all good now. So this is Positive Parenting. This was created and presented by me, Brandy. So today we're just going to kind of cover a few different things. I know an hour is not a lot of time to cover a whole lot of things, but we will still hit some main topic and get some ideas. We're going to talk about what it even is positive parenting, why is it important, and then we're going to talk about 12 different ways of how can we implement, how can we promote positive parenting within our clients, within the families that we see, also within ourselves in our own homes. We're also going to have some examples and then time for questions. So what is positive parenting? Some people have never heard of it. Some people are like, oh yeah, I know exactly what that is. And some people get it very confused with things like gentle parenting. So positive parenting doesn't necessarily mean being perfect or never saying no to our kids. That's usually the one that I get all the time. It really just means raising your kids in a way that it's consistent, it's supportive, it's nurturing, while still setting some healthy limits and some boundaries. So basically, at its core, positive parenting focuses on things like building a strong relationship with a child. And within that relationship, you're showing care, you're showing warmth, you're teaching and guiding instead of, punishing and having these major consequences. You're communicating clearly, you're leading by example, you're meeting the child's physical and emotional needs. A lot of positive parenting is being a healthy, communicative individual yourself, right? Modeling all these outcomes and these behaviors that you want to see from your children. So we know that children do best when they feel safe, they feel understood, they feel supported, even when they make mistakes. And that can be really hard as a parent, right? If you are a parent or you're helping some families through some issues, that can be really hard. It's easier said than done. But it's also really important to remember that positive parenting is strengths-based. And what that means is that we really try to focus in on what the children are doing right, not just what they're doing wrong. What's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? Rather than saying, I saw you did a really great job on this, but this could use some work. So always leading with that strength and what they're doing right. So we build confidence, emotional intelligence, and resilience by reinforcing positive behaviors and teaching skills rather than relying on fear or shame. So basically, all of that to say, positive parenting, it's really about guiding children with respect, structure, and compassion, helping them grow into emotionally healthy and responsible adults, which means we also have to be that adult as well, right? We have to show them that, what's expected, how it should be, how it could be, and what we're wanting to see. And so kind of going back to that, I hear a lot of what's the difference between positive parenting, gentle parenting. They sound like the same thing, right? So there's really two key differences between positive parenting and gentle parenting. Whereas positive parenting, it really focuses on outcome, structure, and skills, learning, building. Gentle parenting more focuses on the tone, the emotional connection, and how discipline is delivered. So notice that both of them have boundaries, both of them have, setting limits and having a sort of discipline, if you will. But both are very different, delivered very differently. Positive parenting is really like almost like a broad research-based approach, right? So we have this big umbrella of parenting, and at the top of it, you have positive parenting. Now, how you could deliver that, there's a lot of different options, and positive or gentle parenting could be one of those. Just for the sake of examples, just to kind of make sure we clear that up a little bit is, for positive parenting, you might say, cleaning your room is expected. If it's not done, then screen time will be paused. But I'll help you get started, right? So then you're offering some boundaries, but you're offering it warm, and you're offering consequence, but then you're also giving that support. I'll help you get started. Gentle parenting, you might say, I see that you don't feel like cleaning. That's okay to feel. Let's figure out how to make this easier together, right? So you're still delivering the empathy, you're setting for collaboration, and you have that low pressure tone. So you're really focusing on that emotional piece of the pie. Ultimately, both really aim to teach, to help with that positive income, to deliver, those feelings and have a safe space for those feelings, but also having boundaries. But positive parenting is more structured and outcome focused. Right, so why is positive parenting so important that we're even doing a whole hour of lecture on it, right? Positive parenting really matters, not just for children. It matters for the family unit as a whole, and it even impacts communities ultimately. There's been a lot of research on positive parenting, and it shows that when children are raised in supportive, consistent, and respectful environments, often they tend to show less aggression. They engage in fewer risky or dangerous behaviors. They do better in school, and which in turn later in life, adulthood. They develop stronger social skills. If a child is learned and grown to share their, emotional vocabulary, they're able to implement those as they continue to grow, which then builds those stronger social skills. Positive parenting also strengthens the parent-child relationship, right? That's really, really important. And children are more likely to trust their caregivers, feel respected, and feel emotionally safe. This leads to stronger family bonds, more stability and security, higher self-esteem, better overall mental health. When they have a place they can go to where they can not only feel their feels, but talk about their feels and feel supported and safe in that same all environment, there's all overall better outcomes. If we're looking at this from, like a social work or maybe a mental health perspective, one of the biggest benefits of positive parenting is the impact on emotional intelligence. I can't say that enough. Every time a child comes through in here, it's always talking about, and we're always checking and learning and understanding where they are in that emotional intelligence. The ability to recognize, they understand, to manage their emotions. All of these are really important key skills that they learn through observation. They learn through implementation, what it looks like in the home, what it looks like at school, in their environment. When a child learns how to handle their emotions in healthy ways, they tend to have fewer behavioral problems. They can cope better with stress. They build healthier relationships. They experience better long-term life outcomes, right? All that to say, it helps children feel safe. They feel confident, emotionally capable, and better prepared for adulthood. If as a child they're learning how to handle stress, how to handle their emotions, how to talk about their emotions, that in turn really sets them up in their adulthood, where we then are impacted every day by stressors of all different kinds and by relationship struggles as they're growing into finding that significant other, all of these things. And if they're able to have that emotional intelligence, it's a little bit easier, it's a little bit lighter for them to manage. So, what are those ways to promote, implement positive parenting? There's a whole lot. There's lots of different ways, as I kind of talked about positive parenting as that umbrella, and there's all these different ways underneath there of how to deliver positive parenting. But here are some of the 12 kind of, some of them are broad and general. That way you get a kind of a general understanding. So empathy and understanding, right? We want to encourage and validate those feelings. Make sure they feel heard. Make sure they know that we understand what they're saying and understanding, and we're giving them space to empower them to use words to share what they're feeling, right? We want to make sure that they know they're safe to share those feelings and express those feelings. We can still have boundaries and we can still have follow up from that, but knowing that they can come to you, and even if it's with you, say, you know what, I'm a little frustrated and angry with you. Um, but I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to breathe and I'm going to relax for a second. Can I please have a moment? My own kids, I have one 11-year-old that sometimes when she gets angry, she'll look at me and she'll be like, you know what? I need a minute to walk away. Can I please have a minute from this conversation? And you know what? I respect that and honor that, even though I might be frustrated. But giving her that space to say, I need a moment, sometimes keeps that from escalating. It keeps it from getting bigger and bigger into this problem where we're having an all-out fight, right? Anyone that's got preteens, teens, you know the struggle, okay? I hear you. But if we're modeling, we're giving that space, sometimes it makes it a little bit easier and time for both of you to de-escalate a little bit and then come back and talk about that. Understanding cues, reflecting their needs. Sometimes kids don't always know how to say it, right? Maybe they haven't built that emotional vocabulary yet, or maybe they just don't know how to say it or they don't want to say it. So if we're understanding, we're picking up on cues when they're uncomfortable or they're frustrated or they're feeling a little down about something, make sure we're respecting that, we're understanding that so that we can ask questions, right? Ask those open-ended questions to get them to talk to us and remind them they have this safe space to share. Understanding the situation from their point of view. There's your point of view, there's my point of view, and then there's everyone else that saw it as well and their point of view, right? So remembering that our experience isn't always the same as their experience, even in the same exact scenario. So kind of asking, reflective questions. What did you hear by that conversation? Sometimes, again, kind of going back to my own life, is having that conversation with my daughter, and I might say something to her and I see that it didn't get well received, but even though she didn't say it, but maybe it was something that rubbed her the wrong way or something she didn't understand or misunderstood. And so sometimes I just have to ask her, what do you think that I just said? Because sometimes it lands like mom doesn't understand me. She doesn't get what I'm going through. She doesn't know because she's old and I'm in middle school, right? And so asking that question, what did you hear me say? What do you think that I meant by what we just said? Okay, let me clarify what I actually meant, because that's not at all what I was intending to say. Which brings us then to clear communication. Active listening, right? We all know how important that is. It shows them that you're listening. You can do that with your nonverbals. You can show interest in what's happening in their lives, ask those questions, not just how was school today, but asking those questions of, did you talk to anyone new today? Who did you sit with at lunch? Spill the tea, what happened today? Whatever that might look like, for the conversation that's appropriate to your child. Um, make sure that you're having those conversations, you're showing interest in what they're doing. And you're actually listening, right? We can get caught up in kids getting in the car and just spilling their guts about the whole day, and you're, doing all of these different things while driving and thinking about your own stuff. Make sure that you're actually engaged and you're having these conversations. You're reflecting back to what you hear, nodding your head. Obviously you can't always make eye contact if you're driving, but giving those little cues to let them know that you're listening. Having the respectful dialogue, right? They don't always say things that we agree with or that we like, but if we can respectfully have that conversation, it teaches them how to, in turn, have that dialogue later when they don't agree with something. Use clear and consistent language. Make sure that you're not changing different things, the meaning of different things. One thing that, um, you know, calling names or making jokes or whatever that might be in your household, you know, knowing that if you're going to make a joke out of it, later you can't get mad about it, right? Being consistent in what you're saying, but also offering language that doesn't change. It all means the same thing all the time. Be sensitive to their cues, verbal and nonverbal. Again, making sure that you're paying attention. What the words that they're saying don't always match their behavior and their outward response. So be paying attention to that and ask them, right? Don't be afraid to say, hey, you know what? It looks like maybe you need some space. So you're having some big feelings. Maybe you need a moment. That's okay if you do. Um, Communicate to the child that, if you need space to calm yourself before returning to have the conversation about the situation, you're free to take that. But we do have to come back and have this conversation because it is still a concern, right? Engage in honest and open conversations with children. Especially about things for, military life, deployments, PTSD, are you moving? Things that could apply to, just anybody. Any of those big things that are impacting the family, have open and honest lines of communication with them. That's the only way you're going to understand what they're actually feeling about it. I recognize that we can't always take that into consideration and we can't always, change the things that are happening based on the way our children are feeling, but at least giving that space to feel heard, right? I don't want to leave my friends again. Well, I hear you. I understand that. I know that must be really hard, but the military says we have to move, so we have to move. But do you want to kind of talk about ways that we can make new friends in the future? Or how can we celebrate with your friends before we do go? Um, Talk about things that they may be learning or hearing at school. That's really important, right? Age appropriate space, as appropriate for the age. Talk about things like suicide, drugs, sex, drinking. These things are coming into our children's schools and their social lives much sooner than any of us would like, right? We have kids that are having to do lockdown drills for active shooters in elementary school, right? Could be really scary. And you don't realize this until you're having these conversations and you're asking these things. But opening up the line of communication and giving them the opportunity to ask questions so that they can make sure that they truly understand, and you can make sure that they truly understand. Setting clear boundaries, right? We want to help a child set goals for themselves. We could do that collaboratively by setting attainable goals for the family. It fosters a sense of security, knowing that they can reach their desired goal and meet expectations, right? We want to make sure that these goals are reasonable and they don't sound so hard, way out of their reach. They're children, right? It's very easy to shut down by thinking that they can't reach that goal or they can't do something. So if we're setting goals that feel attainable and then setting those mini steps of how can we get there, and we're talking about it and we're continuing to visit it, sometimes that really kind of bolsters that confidence and knowing that we can get there. Um, Discussing the expectations and allowing input. If you're having a family meeting, if you're setting goals for the family as a whole, maybe it's chore charts or maybe it's new scheduling or whatever that might look like for your family. Be clear about the expectations, but also open up the space for allowing input, right? We want to make sure that they feel heard, they feel seen, and they feel like they have, that they're able to meet that goal, right? We don't know if they're able to meet it if we're not allowing input and we're just setting it and saying, this is the goal for the family, this is how it must be, right? And at the end of the day, we can still say, well, I hear you, and this is how it must be. But now we can offer some empathy and understanding that, but we can also, how can we support you in making you feel the confidence that you can meet the expectation? Be honest and direct in explaining the rules. This is why the rule is here. I've noticed some dependency on screen time And screen time can be really difficult and damaging as we go through the week and we lose sleep. And I noticed some difficult behaviors, and it seems to be directly connected to screen time. So for the next 3 months, we're going to limit screen time to only on the weekends for a certain amount of time. There will be no screens during the week. And so having that conversation, and that is going to feel unfair and it might elicit a meltdown. And that's where we validate those feelings. I know that that feels very stressful, but let me tell you, there are lots of different ways that we can fill time. We can have dinner together. We'll sit at the table. Maybe we have a new game time. Maybe we do something, a board game, having ways to support that, not feeling so heavy. Set limits, redirect when exceeding the limits. Again, maybe going back to that screen time on the weekends. You're only supposed to have 2 hours of time. And I noticed that we're going over that time and, there has to be some consequences. I'll give you, kind of a pass this one time, but, the next time we're going to have to figure out what do we do next, right? I know that's frustrating and I know you want more time and maybe your game is updating and getting new cool prizes, whatever that might be. But I'm sorry, you're gonna have to wait till your time tomorrow to manage your time for that. But in the meantime, let's go build a snowman, right? Offering that support and other options. Consistency. We all know that routines are important in childhood, right? In our kiddos' lives, it provides stability even in times of change. So even when, say you're moving, you're PCSing, or there's a deployment, or maybe mom or dad has to travel, whatever the kind of the daily or the big life changes might be, holding stability to that routine as much as possible is really, really important. I know it's not always possible because there are things that change in life, but making sure that you're doing as much as possible. Maybe your morning routine is not happening in the same place, but maybe the same routine happens. You wake up, you brush your teeth, you have breakfast, as closely following that as you can. Create regular family routines, having family dinners, Friday game night, whatever that might look like. For me, something that we do is during the week, we have family dinners at the table, Monday through Friday, every weekend or every week. And then, on Sunday nights after bath time, we have family game night. We play a board game, or maybe we play Mario Party, whatever that might be for your family. But that's just kind of some consistency that my kids look forward to, and they know that it's coming and they anticipate it coming. So it just sometimes makes less of a fight. It makes less of stress when they understand that that's the expectation, because that's the routine that we do every week. Consistently remind children of expectations to foster understanding of the rules of limitations. Again, being consistent. These are the rules. These are the expectations. This is what you have to do. This is how we're going to get there. And if that feels heavy, help me understand why. And let's set some smaller goals to help you get there. Unified parenting, ensuring both parents are consistent in parenting styles to avoid confusion. Really make sure that you both agree on house rules. So if parenting is even across the board, as much as possible, it really kind of helps take away some of that stress, and eventually makes that routine or that change feel a little easier to get into the routine of. And I know this can be really hard, especially when parenting is happening within two different households, right? You can't dictate how someone else's household runs. But if you can somehow foster that communication with the other parent, so that you can have some sort of consistency and some kind of unity in how things go for the child, it makes it a little less stress for them, and it makes it a little bit easier when transitioning between households. Positive reinforcement. So rewards don't always have to be a gift, right? It doesn't always have to be we'll go buy something, we'll go do this, we'll go do that, things that cost a lot of money. It could be maybe you give a little extra screen time or some extra time outside, or just any of those simple things that bring joy or curiosity. Maybe you bake something together or have extra craft that you do this week, whatever kind of brings joy, sparks curiosity, and keeps them excited. That could be a reward. You want to acknowledge the good behaviors, not just reward them, celebrate it, verbally. You did a really great job. I'm so proud of you. Now that you've kind of reached this goal and you're doing so good on working towards it, you're being consistent on it. I think maybe this week you get to pick dinner on Friday night. What do you think would be your favorite dinner, your dream dinner that I could put together for you? Um, and reinforce positive actions and encourage repeat behaviors, right? Again, holding that consistency. If you can continue to do this all week, then we'll do this at the end of the week. If you continue to, have this behavior that I'm hoping for, on this weekend, you can have extra screen time. Praise the child for their responsibility and commitment. That's really important, especially as the children get older and hit like middle school, high school. You really want to focus in on that responsibility, their commitment, their follow through. Responsibility is such a big thing as they get older, and helping them to understand where they're responsible for things and where they should be held accountable for their actions, even when that's a really great behavior. Reinforce positive behaviors with praise, small rewards, increase the screen time. Even if it's just constant verbal praise can be great too. Modeling behavior, and I know I've brought this up a few different times, probably in almost every slide, right? We want to lead by example. It is so important that we are modeling the behavior that we're hoping for. If we are flipping our lid and losing our tempers and we're yelling or raising our voices, we're not managing our emotions, we're not able to regulate ourselves, we can't expect the child on the other end seeing this behavior, taking this behavior in, we can't expect them to be able to do these things that we can't even do, right? If we can't sit here and be able to calm ourselves and to keep from getting activated and to keep from raising our voice, we can't expect a child to know how to do it, because where else are they going to learn it, right? Other than at home by the people that are meant there to guide and support them. We want to model positive coping mechanisms and behaviors. Again, that I need a few minutes. I am feeling very frustrated with you. Can you please let me have a minute to de-escalate myself? I'll come back and have this conversation with you in a minute, but I'm very frustrated, and I think you should take that moment to reflect as well. Demonstrate resilience with a positive attitude during challenging times. Again, that I hear you're frustrated, and you need to stop raising your voice to me. But I think that we can overcome this. We can have this conversation, and I think that we can get an outcome that both of us will be happy with. Modeling adaptability by accepting changes, finding the positive in every situation. That can be really hard, right? Even as parents, we are human. We get to make mistakes too. We get to have big emotions. Hiding them isn't always the answer, right? We get to make mistakes. But taking on change and accepting change can be really, really hard, and can be really hard to manage our emotions in that moment, whether that means a last minute deployment, a last minute going to the field, some kind of stressful activation. Yeah, exactly. Be the change you want to see in your child. That's so important. That's such a good way to put it. But if we can take and we can adapt to changes and find a positive spin to the situation, it really can help our kids then kind of jump on that same train, help them adapt, help them accept the changes and move forward some way or another, trying to find the positive light. We can always find the difficult pieces of things, right? Our brains will always see the negative. We can always understand what made us feel uncomfortable or have negative emotions. We can always identify those, right? But if we start teaching our brain to start looking for those positive things, we'll start to see them more and more, even when we feel like they're never present. We're just missing the opportunity. Express your feelings in a healthy way. Resolve conflicts peacefully. Again, how I had mentioned, I'm having a really hard time right now, and I'm trying to not to lose my temper. So I think that we need to disengage for a few minutes. I'm going to need a few minutes to breathe. I'm going to step outside, and I think you should take that time to reflect as well. But making sure that you're coming back and having that peaceful resolution in that conversation. Demonstrating teamwork by involving everyone when appropriate decisions, making the family, right? As I had said before, we can't always change anything based on how our children are feeling, but we can still have that conversation. We can make them feel heard. We can help them to understand why we can't change it. A lot of times first of all, a lot of times kids just want to be heard. They want they want to know that somebody understands how they're feeling or what they're saying and feel like someone actually cares, right? But then they just want to know the why. Sometimes they just need to understand why things are happening, why things are going this way. And it sometimes brings that little bit of comfort. Problem solving skills, right? So we want to encourage creative thinking and alternative approaches, build confidence by highlighting strengths, guide them through problem solving even when they may be upset, encourage independence to find a solution with a little guidance, and teach decision making skills. So these are absolutely learned skills, right? We want to teach our kids from a very early age. Think about when you have an infant or a baby, that you have those little blocks and they're different shapes, and you're putting in that little square thing that has the shapes where you could drop the blocks in, right? And you notice they're trying to shove the triangle into the circle and it doesn't fit, and that causes frustration, right? And so helping them guide that into, oh, well, it doesn't fit here. Uh-oh, let's try another one, and teaching them problem solving skills. If it doesn't fit in this, what else can we try? Right. And so that kind of just really implements into from being a baby all the way up through adulthood, right? It's always a skill that we're always learning and always growing on, no matter what our ages are, because we have to find creative ways of thinking. How can we come at this from a different angle? What are some other options that could be helpful? Or even, what are some options that are out there? Evaluate all of them. And some of them may not be the best option, right? Somebody hit me. So what did I do? I hit them back. Well, that was absolutely an option in the moment. What are some things that you could have done that maybe wouldn't have made the problem worse? And have them explore some of those more positive solutions, but also helping them understand, yes, that was a solution that you tried, and as you can see, it didn't work. What are some better ways we can approach this without having some negative outcome? But also encouraging the independence, I think, is really important, because as parents, we want to solve all their problems, right? We want to swoop in, we want to save the day, we want to just make things easier for our babies. And when I say babies, I mean our big babies, our little babies, whatever that might be in your age range. But we want to make things easier for them. We want to make things right. We want them to just get through life, right? And to not be sad or mad. But here we are, it's inevitable, right? They're going to feel those big emotions, and we want to guide them and teach them that they can do things for themselves. They can make it happen. They can think creatively and solve their own problems. But also knowing that mom is here or dad is here to support you and to help you. But I need you to be able to make decisions. You need to learn how to have other options and how to think critically on ways that we can solve your own problems. Education and resources. Education is always so very important in everything that we do, right? We want to stay involved in our kids' education and know where they may be struggling. Use those parent-teacher conferences. Have conversations with your teachers, even when it's not parent-teacher conference time, right? If there's some bullying, go talk to the counselor or the principal, or advocate for your child. Be in the school, understand what they need, talk to the teacher and say, I hear that they might need some help with reading, and then they're going to these other groups, but she reads or he reads at home, and I don't see these same kind of concerns. Where's the disconnect? Help me understand. What kind of things are you learning in class? What kinds of things, am I wishing that you were learning in class? Have these conversations. You get to speak up and you get to advocate, because sometimes our kids don't feel comfortable or understand or know that they can. Incorporate things like homework or study time into your daily routines. If you're setting that, we're going to have dinner, round table dinner every single night with our family, set aside time 20 minutes before, 20 minutes after, to make sure that they're doing that homework. I have one that's while I'm cooking dinner, my oldest, when she's doing homework, she sits at the table and she does homework. That way, while I'm cooking dinner, if she needs help, I'm there to support. And then I have my little one that reads to us after bed or after dinner. Before bed, she does her reading time, right? So figure out what works for your family. How can you implement it? And even when, we feel like we're just so busy and we have all of these things, There are ways to incorporate where things might overlap and can be helpful for everyone. Encourage learning with activities outside of school. Work together for a scavenger hunt through the neighborhood, visit museums, libraries, lots of opportunities that are even free out there to help to, bolster and continue to grow and learning and activities that don't necessarily have to be in school time, but also don't have to feel educational, right? Scavenger hunts through the neighborhood. It helps them in, recognizing things, colors, shapes, directions, reading, all of these different kinds of things that all go into that kind of hands-on learning in a scavenger hunt. Um, so lots of creative ideas out there. Um, Making sure that you're also very aware of what resources are actually available to you. I know like school districts are always changing, funding is always changing, availability of services is always changing. So if there's something missing in the school, see what's out in the community because there are, potentially several different resources that could be an option. If your kid's needing IEPs or 504s, who can that be? How can I reach out to someone? Is there someone in the school board? Is there a like a school liaison for the military kids? Is there tutoring services, counseling services? All these different kind of things that could be an option that isn't always available at school, but could be available in the community. And seeking support, right? Just as the parent, things can be really, really hard. If our kid's not getting the support that they need, or they are needing extra support, sometimes that could be very overwhelming as a parent, right? So, finding your people, if you will, right? Maybe it's a support group of parents going through the same thing or having children that are struggles as well. Be aware of your child's peer connection and asking about their friends in school. That's so important, especially as they grow up into middle and high school, right? Being really involved in that. Be the mom or be the dad that everyone knows that if this child is coming somewhere, their mom or dad's not far behind, right? That's okay. But be engaged, be listening, be understanding, because those are absolutely resources as well for your kiddo. May not always be the best resources, but maybe sometimes they are the place, that safe space for your kid that are going to and talking to, or they're learning a lot of stuff from each other. So making sure that you know who your kid's talking to, who they're hanging with, what kind of things they're getting into at school. And foster a passion for learning, right? We all know where that's important. But just kind of giving if they're interested in science, how can I facilitate that at home? How can I build that up? How can I bring that passion for learning to life? Or maybe math, they hate math and maybe they don't feel like they're good at it, but how can we incorporate it into something at home, right? Maybe we could start doing baking and we're working on fractions, how can we implement that into something that does bring joy and maybe potentially spark some kind of excitement for learning and help them in turn in classroom. Respect and empowerment. Empower and allow children to make decisions for themselves. It can be really, really, really hard. I know. As with parenting in general, I know I've said that probably with every slide that it can be really hard. But that's parenting. So sometimes it consists of what outfit to wear, even when it's mismatched, or what game to play, or how you play the game. Allow for that independence to experience natural, logical consequences for choices that they make. Um, as I said, let them wear what they want to wear. Sometimes we kind of just stand back and we're like, oh, okay, all right, we're doing this. If they want to go full fancy Nancy when they're going to school, let them go full fancy Nancy, right? As they get older, they're trying to figure out who they are and what style they like and how they want to present themselves. Let them experiment, let them understand what it is that, they are learning about themselves and how they're learning to share who they are. Um, Involve children as much as possible in decisions for the family. Maybe it's, oh, we're thinking about going out to dinner as a family this weekend. Where do you think would be a good idea to go to? Um, or, sometimes there might be, again, hey, we're going to have to move across town. And I know that could be really stressful because you're going to have to change schools. So do you want to kind of talk about that? And how can we make it a little bit easier? Um, but let them be involved in the discussion. Respect autonomy and foster self-esteem. Again, let them make their decisions. Let them have a voice. Let them, learn from things, and they're not always going to have a positive outcome from the decisions that they make. But as long as they're safe and they're not harming themselves or anyone else, let them fall a little bit, right? We can be there to pick them up and support them, but let them fall. Let them learn from the decisions that they make. And guide them to make healthy choices, allow them the power to choose, offer options. They can't always, again, make the choice or the decisions or alter the outcomes, but maybe they can have some power and choice of how you get there, right? There are very few things as a child, as a minor, that you get to have choice in, that you get to make decisions for, especially when you're tiny. But if we give them space of here is the outcome, this is what has to happen. You must clean your room, and it has to be done by Sunday at 3 o'clock. But you can either, push through and get it all done now so that you have Sunday to relax, or, maybe you space it out and you do a little bit at a time, have a little screen time, go back to cleaning, have a little screen time. However you choose to get there, this is the expectation of when it has to be done, and that's not changing. But how you get there is your choice. Somebody said, I'm a fan of providing them with a few choices within my limits, and options are empowering. Absolutely. Like I said, there's not a lot that, when you're a child, a minor, that you have power of choice or decision over. So making them feel a little bit of that gives them that confidence to continue to meet that expectation, while also having a little bit of control and power in that choice and how you get there. Celebrating accomplishments, even the small ones, helps to build that confidence, helps them feel empowered, helps them feel excited. Adaptability, emphasize positive aspects of change, highlight the new possibilities, demonstrate flexibility and ability to adjust to new things, involve children in decision making. You'll notice that it's been on almost everything, right? Because it is so, so important to give them a little bit of power and control where you can, and a little bit of input. Encourage them to share their thoughts and feelings about the changes, and validate and support them through the adjustment. Celebrate, congratulate them, tell them how proud you are of their ability to adapt to, maybe some really difficult moments, right? Maybe your child is being bullied at lunch, and so your child chooses to disengage from all of that to save herself or himself from that stress and anxiety. So maybe they move to a different lunch table, and that could be hard for parents to see, right? Especially when they choose to sit by themselves, right? That could be a really difficult thing to accept. But celebrating with them about their adaptability, their ability to accept that, hey, I don't like the way this is. So despite wanting to still sit with the other friends at the table, I'm gonna adapt to the problem. I'm gonna change the outcome, and I'm gonna go over here and sit by myself for a little while to disengage from that. So celebrating their decision making and their ability to adapt to a situation to make the outcome feel a little lighter, feel a little better for them. But also encouraging them to, have those thoughts and feelings about the change. Right? They can come home and say, hey, I was really frustrated that I had to change my seats today because of X, Y, Z being so mean. I really wanted to sit with my friends and have lunch today, but I had to move away because I couldn't stand it anymore. Give them that space to understand that and validate, support them through that adjustment, and reminding them, hey, you know what? You did a really great job choosing to disengage and not making things worse. And I know that was frustrating, but also maybe temporary, right? Maybe there's an alternative way that you can still sit there and not have to, engage with your bully or whatever that might look like. Unconditional love, right? So important for all of us, to feel it and to give it. Provide unconditional love, validation, emotional support to help children cope with stressors of military life or just life in general, right? Life is so lifey sometimes at all ages. Regularly offer praise and affection. Show that you love them by listening and validating their feelings. This does not impact your love for them, even when they make mistakes, right? If I have to set hard boundaries or, hand out consequences, unfortunately, reminding them that, just because I'm frustrated with this behavior at this very moment, I still love you. And I'm still so proud of you for all of these really great things that you do in life. It's just at this moment, we need to talk about how can we work through this. Schedule quality time, one-on-one time, whatever is appropriate for your family unit. But scheduling that quality time is so important where you're not worrying about work. They're not worrying about school. You're not questioning them about homework. We're not worrying about, dinner having to be made or groceries having to be bought. It is just family time. We just sit down, we play a game, we laugh. We don't have a worry in the world except for what's right here in front of us. Um, Model forgiveness when they make mistakes. Again, I understand that what you did may have been out of reaction of frustration. And I forgive you for doing that because, I also got frustrated. Um, but how can we make it sure that, we can change this so it doesn't happen again? Or, how can we make sure that we're approaching these conversations differently so you don't feel like you need to raise your voice? Um, an example that I try to use is, spilling milk. Don't cry over spilled milk, right? Um, but when my daughter gets upset that she spilled milk or her drink, because my kids spill everything. I try to remind them that, it's okay. I love you more than I love that milk. I love you more than I love that juice that you spilled on the table. How can we clean this up? How do we fix the problem here? How can we problem solve? And maybe that's a here, let me hand you the kitchen towels now, clean this up, and that's okay. Let me refill your drink while you're cleaning that up. So modeling that forgiveness and that unconditional love. Somebody said in the chat, as a child grows and goes through the stages of development like puberty, active listening to their stories and needs, teens have the greatest need to learn from consequences of choices and need support more than discipline. Exactly. That's very, very true. That is such a hard time for learning different things and especially learning about who your friends are and who you are and all of these different kinds of things. These social emotional pieces of life is really, really difficult. So giving them that space to not only learn from their mistakes, right? Let them make choices and observe the positive and negative outcomes, but also helping them pick themselves up and how to go forward, how to approach that going forward, and how to have that kind of emotional response that is safe and it's supported and appropriate. And finally, self-care. Self-care is a part of everything that we do, right? We talk about this from, mental health first aid to PTSD work to being the therapist or being the social worker, being the provider of any kind of sort. Self-care is so important. You have to prioritize your own well-being, right? If you are going to model that appropriate behavior, if you're going to model these skills that you want to teach your child, you have to make sure that you have a cup to pour from, right? If your cup is empty, you've got nothing to give. And that happens very easily. Seek out opportunities for relaxation, stress relief, both individually and as a family. Can we go to the gym together as a family? Can we put like a fun workout on there and promote some healthy exercise as a family? Or get outside and get some fresh air on a hike or a walk or a bike ride. Leading by example, if you aren't showing that you're important and that your self-care is important to you, how can they ever know that it's okay to take care of themselves? Right. One of the things that I get frustrated by and kind of get on my soapbox is that we teach kids with homework at school, right? You go to school all day, your 8 hours of work of school, you go home and then you have all this homework to do. But then as an adult, we teach them go to work all day, but you really need to leave your work at work and then come home and be a mom, a dad, a sister, a brother, whatever it might be for you. So teaching, self-care early And yes, you might have to do your homework and you're gonna have to keep your grades up, but it's also really important that if tonight is not the night to do your homework because maybe you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling really run down today, maybe you're exhausted, or maybe you tried it a little bit and you just can't get it. It's okay to take a break from it today because it's not due until the end of the week. So give yourself some grace. Go do some self-care, do some deep breathing, do some stress relief, take a hot bath, whatever that might look like for you, and give yourself a, a grace to understand that. Somebody said schools are doing away with homework these days, maybe not in high school, but younger grades. Yeah, I've noticed that a lot too in my own kids is that there's some, and it's usually if you don't finish it in school, it comes home, which is reasonable. Um, seek support, social or mental health. Lead by example again of it, mental health isn't taboo, right? If you're feeling some type of way, you need a little extra support. There are resources out there to go get some help, and that's okay. Talk about it. Be like you don't have to tell your kids that you suffer from depression or PTSD or anxiety. You don't have to necessarily go into detail, but not being shy about, you know what, I have therapy today. So I might be late getting to your basketball game or your football game or gymnastics. I might be late getting to your practice today because I have a therapy appointment. And so, being open, engaged, having conversations. Practice and model healthy coping skills. Doing that deep belly breathing is a really good one in the moment. It really kind of brings you back to the front of your brain to be able to relax a little bit, um, and can really teach kiddos that it's okay to feel activated and to feel frustrated and mad and sad and like that you want to blow steam and that you're about to blow your top. That's okay as long as you know how to get yourself back down to where you want to be, where you need to be able to reasonably cope, is a really important thing to model and teach. Engage in hobbies that make you happy. As parents, we tend to lose ourselves in our kids, right? All of our kids' scheduling and their emotional and physical well-being. We tend to lose ourselves in that, plus working and all of these other things. So finding a hobby and making time to do it, right? For some people, that's exercising. For me, if you see me running, there's a problem. It's not a hobby. But I enjoy, maybe it's taking 20 minutes a day to breathe and do my diamond art. I really enjoy that. It gets my brain in that moment of some mindfulness and forgets about all the stress and anxiety around you, right? So finding something and showing the kids that I get to do this. This is some main time. This is the time that you chose to have screen time. So I'm going to have some me time to do this. And you'll see there, like one of my things that I like to share with kids a lot, or even adults, because it's the five senses. Grounding skill is always so important for everybody, right? And an easy way to remember it is just putting your hand up and remembering to stop. And you want to do 5 things you can hear, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can taste, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you see, whatever order you can remember it in. That way, it helps you again get back to the front of your brain to calm down and relaxing and reground to where you want to be able to, cope with whatever stressors coming at you. Someone said, making healthy choices about substance use can be one way of modeling and enhancing a child's resilience to drug use and other unhealthy behaviors. Absolutely. And having that line of communication, right? How can they know that you're choosing to abstain from substance use if you're not having conversations about it, right? And it's not drugs are bad, right? It's, hey, there are some really unhealthy consequences to this. And, sometimes that smoking commercial comes on, right? And so having that conversation of, do you know what happens when you smoke? Or, have you been around that smell and almost kind of taste it because someone's smoking around you? And, having these actual open lines of conversation and not thinking that because I brought it up and we're having conversation of it, it's putting that thought in their head, right? Most of the time, they're kids. They're already exposed to it. They're already learning about it in their environment somewhere. And you want to be in control of what they're learning. What are they learning about substance use or sex or some of those other really big topics? You want that to be an controlled learning so that they're learning the right things about it, the facts, rather than what their friend heard or what someone saw on TikTok or whatever that might be. So just some quick examples that I put together just to show positive parenting. A parent might say, why did you push Tommy down? And the child is frustrated. He said, he stole my truck, right? And the parent said, you're mad, I get it. However, you're not allowed to push people down. So come sit with me until you can, go back to being calm. And a child being a child, right? It's frustrated. It's mine. Make him give it back. I want my truck back. The parent, can then say, hey, I want you to sit with me right now. We'll talk about your truck and we will get your truck back when you're not so angry, right? We don't want to have these negative outcomes that turns into a pushing match because we didn't intervene and we didn't, kind of correct and have consequences to guide them to making better choices. Um, a suggestion is to employ a time in until the child's anger has subsided. There are lots of things that you can do to teach a child how to regulate their emotions. You can do deep breathing, coloring, hugs, visualization, jumping jacks, different things to work for different children. And, as their parent, you're going to know what helps to calm them down, or maybe they can tell you, or maybe together you can explore different ways. The discipline comes when the storm passes, right? We don't want to throw all these consequences at them and punish them right out the gate while they're activated and they're angry and they're frustrated and they're not understanding or they're feeling these big emotions and they don't know how to, reground themselves, right? So we need to get in there, and that's where we need to be as parents to help them take deep breaths. Maybe we need to color it out for a few minutes. Maybe they just need some hugs. Or just kind of talking through it. Maybe they need to have that space to just share all the things that they're feeling about it and share what their frustration is, and then come in and say, you did a great job calming down. Look at Tommy's face. How do you think he's feeling? How do you think he would feel if you were pushed down, right? Teach them to put themselves in another place to encourage that empathy. Um, how can you make him feel better and get your truck back, right? You pushed and you hurt him, right? So now, we have to also take action, accountability for our actions. So, how can we say, how can we talk to Tommy and get our truck back, but also, let Tommy know that I'm sorry for what I did. But trying to make it to where it's their idea, right? Let them come up with the alternative strategies and support those. A child might say, I don't know. And then maybe that's when you give examples. When someone hurts me, I feel better when they apologize. Do you think that would help, Tommy? We don't want to force apologies. They don't hold much weight. I don't know if you've ever had a child that says, I'm sorry, every time that you correct them for the same thing, right? It doesn't hold a lot of weight. But suggesting to teach a child how to repair relationships, right? Now Tommy's mad at you, you're mad at Tommy, all over a truck when we could have just resolved this another way. Especially when there's the same exact truck sitting 2 feet away. Why couldn't we, work together to get there? So how can we repair relationships? I found ways that they always choose some way to say they're sorry, especially when they're not forced to say it. But instead, we have focused on empathy for others. Um, you know, it's not always I'm sorry. It doesn't always come out straight in the words like that. But maybe it's going over there and picking up the other truck and offering it to Tommy and saying, here you go. Can we trade? Offering alternative options, but also saying sorry in their way that's not forced. The child maybe said, okay, fine, I will, but I want my truck. And then that's when, as a parent, we say, use your words, ask him. How many times a day I say, use your words, use your words, use your words, right? It's really important to remind them that, we can act out a certain way, but nobody can read your mind. And so we need to use our words, saying things like, Tommy, I'm sorry I pushed you down, but I really want my truck back, please. How's that sound? Giving them the guidance, giving them the support, and then letting them go out and implement it. Happens as a positive outcome. Yeah. And so that's the goal, right? We want to encourage and we want to support them through problem solving, support them through making decisions, giving them some say, giving them space to be angry and understand, but also again, giving them a place to calm down and giving them the tools to do so. And not standing up going, whatever his name is, get over here right now and sit down. What you did was not okay, right? They know what they did is not okay, right? So having that, you know what? you're really frustrated, and I understand that right now, but we're gonna have to sit right here. We're gonna have a time in, we're gonna talk about it. But I'm gonna give you a few minutes to calm down. Would you like me to help you with that? And you want me to give you some ideas of how we can calm down together, and then go from there? Oh, I'm sorry, Milton, I may have missed the first part. You said having a child draw a picture of the issue or event that's bothering them and how they would like to see um, that happen as a positive outcome. Absolutely. Drawing, coloring is such a release for a lot of kids, especially younger kids, even older kids, right? Drawing is a big release. And so sometimes you can learn so much just through asking them what they're drawing, letting them have the space to just draw their feelings on a piece of paper or color it. Sometimes asking questions, why did you choose to color that one red? And so I will skip through the other example just so we can have some space for questions if anybody wants them. Um, just a kind of a reminder is that after this, um, presentation, you'll all get an email. I'll have the presentation uploaded on the YouTube, or the recording uploaded on the YouTube, and you'll have that link in the email to follow up. And then also you'll have my email. Should any more questions come up, please reach out to me. I'm happy to do my best to answer what I can. And then also there is a link to a survey. The survey just kind of gives us an opportunity to, how does this work out for you? What are some other things that you would like to see in the next series? Just all of those kinds of things. So if you have a few minutes and you can finish that out for us, that would be really, really great. But otherwise, I appreciate you all sticking with me today. If you have any questions, I'll leave the room open for a few minutes so I can get those answered for you. Thank you all. Thank you, Leah. Thanks for being here. Anybody have any questions? I'll go ahead and end the recording. Again, you'll have my email if you need anything. I'm happy to connect and answer whatever I can for you.